It's 88.3 FM, The Sting, and this is the Cars Marathon, and what a trip it's already been. A road trip, I suppose, on the air. Joe Milliken is a great author and researcher, I suppose, and music journalist out of the Boston area, but I know he was recently here in Cleveland celebrating the induction of the Cars in the 2018 class, and he has a book coming out on the late, great Ben Orr. And to talk about that, here's Joe. Hi, Joe. How are you, sir?
Hey, Todd, how are you? I'm so glad to be on the air.
I am really happy that we made this connection. It's happened lightning fast through common friends, and they were just kind of like, you should talk to this guy. And I said, well, heck, I don't need to talk to him. I need to have him on the show. So there you go. First and foremost, let's talk about the book. Let's get the title out there, and it's coming out in November, correct?
Yeah, the date is set for November 11th, 11/11, in honor of Benny 11 Letters.
Wow, there you go. Got it?
Yeah. It's called Let's Go, Benjamin Orr and the Cars. I signed a book deal back in March, and we're going through the process now of getting everything together. The manuscript and a bunch of photos are submitted. I just okayed the final artwork for the cover. So everything's a go. I'm just waiting to hear back from the publisher's editors, and it should be ready to go in November. The publisher is Roman and Littlefield, and the book can be pre-ordered at the Roman website, and yeah, it looks like it's a go.
I'm pretty fascinated because Ben Orr is not exactly what you would call a very common name outside the Cars lore. So I'm just wondering why a guy, doing so much music journalism that you were doing, covering the music scene. Obviously, the Boston tie is there, but what attracted you to Ben Orr? How did this come about?
Let's see. I've always been a Cars fan. I mean, going all the way back to, discovering rock and roll when I was in junior high school. They were one of my favorite bands early on, and they've always been a sentimental favorite band, but I will admit that it wouldn't necessarily have been my first choice. I was at the time, I've been a published writer for about 20 years, but it's all newspapers and magazines, so writing a book was just a whole different animal, which I discovered quickly. But the way it came about was I actually had a Cars fan reach out to me one day out of the blue. She found my social media page or a profile on social media that saw that I was a writer, a music journalist, saw that I was from Boston, listed the Cars as one of my favorite bands. I now live in Vermont, which is ironic because Ben actually lived in Vermont for a few years towards the end of his life. So she saw all those things and thought I was a candidate, and she got a hold of me and said, I'm not a writer, but you are. You should write this book about Ben. So I wasn't sure at first, of course. I figured if I was going to write a book it would be about the Cars in general and not necessarily an individual member. However, I investigated it, and when I looked a little bit deeper into Mr. Orr's life, I found out all this stuff about his Cleveland days that I knew nothing about, that he was, a childhood star, if you will, and starred on Upbeat Show when he was, 16 years old, and I found out all these Cleveland things about him that I didn't know, and I assumed that a lot of people didn't know, so I asked a couple of Cars fan friends if they knew these types of things about Ben, and nobody did. So after about a month or so of investigating it, I said, you know what, this is it. That whole Cleveland connection is what really hooked me into writing about Ben. So that's why I decided to do it. So it was actually just a shot in the dark from a fan, and it worked.
And here we are now.
Here we are.
Well, it's been a real joy for me, and I know the listeners, just kind of go wild and let loose in the Cars catalog here and just showcase, the whole band's work. But obviously Ben playing a lot of the bass and doing some of the vocals there is a perennial, part of that all, a premium port. I guess let's go back to, to what you have to root yourself writing in the book. Growing up listening to the Cars, what was the first thing that took to you about that?
When I was in junior, I know I'm dating myself here, but when I was in junior high school, the debut Cars album came out, and I swear I remember to this very day the first time I ever heard them. I was actually traveling to a Babe Ruth baseball game with my coach, and we got in the car, and we were driving along, and he put a 8-track tape of the Cars' first album in the tape deck. And I can remember the, Good Times Roll kicked in with that car horn sounding keyboard at the beginning, and I was hooked. What is this, I thought. So I actually remember the first time I ever heard them. Later that day, when I got back from my baseball game, I went up to my friend's house up the street to tell him about this new band I discovered, and lo and behold, he already had the album. And we started listening to it, and then Candy O came out, and Candy O is actually my favorite Cars album. So those two albums came out back-to-back, and that was it. I've just been a fan ever since.
There you go. Makes sense to me. So, obviously, this past spring was pretty cool. I know you made the rounds here in town, and everybody in media was here. It was a wonderful experience to see Cleveland take the spot like that. But quietly, I think you and I both picked up on the fact that how incredibly, whatever you call it, full circle, karma, perfect timing, et cetera, that the Cars go in when the inductions are in Cleveland. It could have happened any year, but man, to have it there this particular year, right as Rhino was already reissuing, there's kind of this upswell of these bands that, quite honestly, have that kind of Cars feel to them, that post-punk, keyboard-laden thing going on. Like the Killers, who helped induct the band, of course, and all that. So I don't know if you picked up on that, but man, it couldn't have been a better place to be there.
As you know, it was magical. It really was. As you said, having the induction in Ben's hometown, tie it in with the 40th anniversary of the debut album. I like to think that the people at the Rock Hall are smart enough to realize that they should. I like to think that they planned it. Okay, the Cars are going in. Ben's from Cleveland. We got to do it in Cleveland this year. Whether it happened that way or it was just a coincidence, I don't know. But I like to think that they planned it because it really was perfect. And I was able to make the trip to Cleveland, and the reception I got was absolutely incredible. I was at, as I'm sure you were, or I don't know if you were, but I was at the Rock Hall the day before the induction ceremony. Had a huge thing at the Rock Hall and all the media there, and I actually got to do a TV interview on Fox Channel 8 out of Cleveland, which was an amazing experience, and I got to do a lot of radio interviews and some newspaper interviews, and I literally had strangers coming up to me and saying, "You wrote the book about Ben Orr? Thank you very much." And they give me a big hug. I assumed that the reception was going to be good for what I was doing, but I had no idea what I was about to walk into at that place. It was an unbelievable experience. So it was great to be there. My public relations assistant, Donna Neal, was also there. Got to mention her name. She's been a huge help to me. When I was doing the TV interview, she was walking up and down Media Row. You know who that is over there? He's writing a book about Ben Orr. You want to talk
That's
to
how
him?
it's done.
And I just did radio interview and newspaper interviews one after the other, and it was an amazing time. It really was. It was a great day. As I'm sure you had a good time as well.
Oh, please, yeah. It's the 1 week a year where I can finally be myself, I think, in my rock and roll lordom. Let's talk about the book. The way this is structured, obviously, it's coming out, so I don't want to put the carpet before the horse. I mean to say, but within this book, how did you? I mean, obviously, it could simply be his life and legacy, but how did you go structuring it? What was the plan of attack?
Wow. First, I want to say that because it was my first shot at writing a book, I didn't really know what the heck I was doing for a while. So the beginning of it just was all about research. I didn't even interview anybody for maybe the first year I got into this project. I just researched and wrote and did that for a while. Obviously, unfortunately, Mr. Orr is no longer with us, so obviously I couldn't interview him for the book. So what I had to do was interview everybody else. I had to find as many people who knew Ben as possible so they could be his voice, and I just started asking questions. And it grew and grew and grew, and the next thing you know, a decade goes by. I'm not a full-time writer. I have another job too, so it's not like I can sit in my office and, like in a movie or something and work on my book for 8 hours a day. It was a spare time kind of thing. But the process became very long and involved because as I was interviewing people who knew Ben, I quickly learned how much of a private man he was. It's interesting. It was almost like he flipped the switch to be a rock star because on stage, as we all know, charismatic, handsome, incredible singer, just an unbelievable performer. But off stage, he was not like that. He was a really down-to-earth, quiet, normal kind of guy, and that's how he wanted to lead his life. So he had kind of two different personas. And so I learned very quickly that he was a very private guy, and because of that, and I totally understand it, his friends and people who were close to him really wanted to protect that, and most of them were very hesitant to talk to me at first. I don't know if Ben would approve of this. I'm not sure what you're going to say about him. What are you going to talk about in this book? All those kinds of things. So it ended up working like this. I would do an interview with somebody, or whoever would agree to interview with me. I'd ask them a bunch of questions, and they'd respond, and then I would create the quotes from their responses that I wanted to put in the book, and I would actually send those people the quotes and say, here you go, here's what I did, this is what will be in the book. So they could look at it, change it, add things, take things out, essentially edit their own quotes, and then they would give me the approval to put it in the book. And I had to do that with, maybe 90% of the people I talked to. So it was a very long, involved process. And that's kind of why it dragged out so long, because I needed to talk to all these people, and they wouldn't talk to me unless we did it this way. They wanted to know exactly what was going in that book, and I respected that and followed that. And I ended up interviewing, at last count, about 130 people. Wow. So, needless to say, it took a long time to do that.
Sure.
But we did it, and just about everybody in the end ended up agreeing to be in the book. I'm talking childhood friends, family members, fellow musicians, record company executives, media people, famous rock photographers. I mean, anybody you can think of. I talked to them, and it was a long process, but well worth it. And it was amazing to me how much people wanted to protect Ben's legacy. Mm-hmm. They were adamant about it, and he was a very loyal guy to his friends, so I completely understand how they felt that way. Didn't make my job easier, that's for sure, but in the end, I'm hoping that there's going to be no surprises. No surprises for the people I interviewed, that is, and hopefully everyone will be happy with it. That's what I'm hoping for. So that's kind of how it went about and why it took me a decade to get this thing put together.
I remember talking to members of Collective Soul because in the middle of their set in the House of Blues, they were just jamming some tunes, talking about their influence or something. It was some kind of weird midpoint in the concert, and they started calling out band names that that influenced them. So he'd say a name, the crowd would cheer. Say a name, he said the Cars, and there was kind of a reaction, but not really. I don't think everybody really heard it because it's one syllable.
Right.
And I'm like looking around like, you've got to be kidding. No one likes the Cars in this room. And that's the image that Collective Soul took. So they're all shocked, like, what's wrong with you people? And I was trying to explain, I don't think they heard, and they're going on, and they started playing a little bit of like, Just What I Needed or something, just a little riff in the middle of their own song or something like that. And I brought it back up to them later, and they're like, "What is going on?" I said, "Honestly, I don't think they heard what you said. I think it was kind of that." And he actually told me a story that when Ben was living in Atlanta, they had crossed paths, and he said it was so cool to have grown up on his music, but then to meet the man and find out that, he in fact was a very cool guy, very private. He even said that, very private man, but a very cool guy, and just, lived up to the, I guess, a little bit of the hype that the music was behind, in the time when he was growing up, the excitement of it all, I guess. I won't go too far. I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but you got that image from people, so it was kind of exciting in that regard. So, okay, so now that we have, the project coming together, this is such a long process. Obviously, there's the book tour and stuff like that. Anything beyond that you like to do? Would you like to do like Q&A sessions around to introduce people to the book and maybe some of his music that people wouldn't know about? Or, I don't know, what plans might you have?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm still kind of mapping out the marketing, public relations part of it, if you will. Once I signed the book deal, it all turned into working with the publisher, meeting my deadline, making sure all the ducks were in a row, getting them everything they needed, securing final photos, all those types of things. And Donna and I had to concentrate on that stuff so much that I really had to put the marketing and the PR part of it aside for a while. I couldn't do both. So I had to get through the deadlines and stuff first. Not that I wasn't thinking about what I was going to be doing, but I just couldn't put anything into motion yet, simply because, well, you can't go around and do a book tour without a book. So I had to, I couldn't, like you just said, I couldn't put the cart before the horse, so to speak. So I had to take care of all of that stuff with the publisher. And once I got through that, like now I'm at the point where the publisher's editors have my manuscript right now, and it's kind of a nerve-wracking part because I'm waiting for them to come back to me with their feedback on my manuscript, and I'm just crossing my fingers and praying that they don't come back and go, Joe, you need to pull this all apart. I'm hoping it's not going to be anything like that. So I had to get past that part of it, and now that I have, Donna and I have started making plans and mapping things out. I just now, this week, released the official press release, and I've been sending that around to a lot of my local medias. I also have, this is kind of cool, I started a mailing list way back when because fans would start hearing about my book and they would contact me out of the blue. Facebook, emails, a couple phone calls even saying, are you the guy writing the book about Ben? Yes, I am. I really want a copy. Well, someday you'll get a copy, and for now, I'll take your name and email address, and I'll put it on my mailing list, and when everything's done, I will let you know.
There you go.
So that mailing list has grown over several years, and it's like over 1,000 names now. So I'm just now, as a matter of fact, today, I'm going to be sending out my press release to all the fans out there that connected with me over the years. Incredible people, by the way. Cars fans are amazing. They treat me so well. I get gifts in the mail out of the blue from people I've never even met or talked to before. Well, maybe I've talked to them, but I just get random packages in the mail from people saying, thank you for doing this. Here's a gift. It's really been amazing. So the press releases are just going out. I have a couple of prominent PR people, a couple of friends I've made along the way, who have also sent out my press release, and now it's starting to blow up. Awesome. I just got a message the other day from ABC News Radio is carrying my press release. They put it on their website, and these different music media publications that have thousands of members. So all these press releases are now going out, and now it's starting to come back, and now it's really starting to get busy. So I'm just now getting the marketing campaign going, and Don and I are just now starting to map out some sort of book tour. Because I have another job, because I have a family, I can't just hit the road for a couple of months and go around the country, and I really wish I could. Wish I had the money to do that too. But I am mapping some stuff out, and I do know I am planning on my first book event to be in Cleveland.
Wow,
I am going to go back to Cleveland. As a matter of fact, I'm haven't really started official talks yet, but I've been in touch with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they are interested in talking to me about holding my first book event at the Rock Hall.
Okay. We'll keep our ear to the ground.
Happen.
Yep.
I'm not.
Sure.
I'm not guaranteeing anything because we haven't even really started serious discussions yet. But I can at least say that they're interested in talking to me about it. So I do plan on a book tour. I am going to come back to Cleveland. I want to be there for a few days and try to set up a couple different events so I can bang them out all at once.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to do one in Boston. It's my hometown, and it's where the cars launched, of course. Do a couple locally around here. And then from there, I'm going to have to carefully plan where my other book events are going to be. So, unfortunately, I can't give too many details yet, but I'm just now starting to map it out. And, I mean, I'm going to be making announcements as I go along on Facebook, my media lists, my mailing list. So I'm going to make sure that everybody knows about it in plenty of time. So I do plan on getting out there and hoping to meet a bunch of fans who want the book, and it's just a matter of mapping it out at this point. So that's kind of where I'm at with the book tour thing. It is going to happen. I just don't have a lot of details at this point.
We should mention your website where people can find out more about the book and then be aware when this all comes to fruition.
Yeah, there's a couple ways you can get a hold of us. I don't have an official website yet, as in, benorbook.com. That's something that I'm working with the publisher on, and they kind of had the same attitude. Well, let's not worry about the website quite yet. Let's make sure the book is done and ready to go. So I do plan on creating some sort of website specifically for the book. However, in the meantime, I have a book page set up on Facebook. So it's just, facebook.com/BenOrBook. If you go to Facebook and go there, I have a page set up. I post things daily about events and what's going on, and I try to keep track of everything there. You can also follow us on Twitter @BenOrBook. So there's a couple places where people can come check us out and find out what's going on. I also have my own. I'm a freelance writer, as you mentioned, and a music journalist, and I have my own website. I publish a music and arts-related website called Standing Room Only, and I mostly write about stuff in my area, as in the New England area, but I do write about national stuff too, so I'm always, writing about the book and sending updates there. So standingroomonly.com. standingroomonly.info is my website, and I have a lot of stuff there too. So those are three different places where people can come reach out and get a hold of me until I get my official Ben Orr Book website up and running. So there's a few options there for people to get a hold of me.
That's fantastic. This is going to be a great thing, and justly so. And like you said, it all kind of ties together. We just had literally the Cars Day. The actual anniversary was just within the last week. I know Rhino Records was crazy on their website, featuring Cars history and stuff like that. And I didn't even put two and two together when I planned this day for the Cars Marathon. That was so close. So I'm like, it's like I planned it. So that's happening. Of course, the 40th anniversary of the new album, of the first album, I should say, and the induction, and now a great volume talking about the late, great Benjamin Orr, who was such an important part of the lineup, of course. I've got his solo record, The Lace, all queued up here if you want to send me into a song or two. I had to say, I played Stay the Night, but I was going to play Too Hot to Stop, because that sounds like what the book process probably went through. So, Joe, it's all yours if you want to play DJ and introduce Benjamin Orr here on the Cars Marathon, 88.3 FM, The Sting.
Ladies and gentlemen, the great Ben Orr with a song off The Lace, an excellent solo album. Enjoy.